I know what you're thinking. Real face, really? Well, suck it up. I had to get this out quick, so we're getting real here. So today you're here to see me try to explain how Disenchanted Part 3 saved the franchise. Also, yeah, they're called parts. Pretty pretentious, but whatever. This was the best season so far, and I am ready to die on this hill. Because it was honestly everything that I wanted. Especially after the confused stumblings that were the last 2 seasons. Because if you watch my last video where I wasted 80% of my runtime just summarizing the show, I liked it. But it never felt cohesive. It was always torn between trying to tell a full-on narrative like Game of Thrones, or just being a regular sitcom like Futurama. Season 2, in my opinion, is the worst in that regard. Season 1 can get away with it because it's the introductory phase, but Season 2 is the absolute worst. Because it starts, first 2 episodes, we're in a new place. We have Bean and her hot MILF. They're both at this place. There's talk of prophecy, foreshadowing, all these things to come. Then after episode 1 they leave, episode 2 they get Elfo, then it's never brought up ever again, and it takes till episode 10 for the plot to get actually started again, you know? The end of the season. And I wouldn't mind this. If everything in between from episodes 3 to 9 were just straight comedy sitcoms, I'd be okay with it. If this show was trying to just be funny, if it just wanted to be a sitcom set in a fantasy world. But this show constantly towed the line between telling that big story and telling these smaller ones. And throughout all of part 2, it was just constantly hinting like, oh, we're gonna tell something bigger here. We're gonna go tell you the real secret. And episodes 3 and 9 were really just a series of misadventures. The closest thing we had to a through line was Bean trying to mentally deal with what happened. But even then, it's not that prevalent. They were pretty much standalone episodes, and with the exception of 2 changes to the status quo, all of season 2 really could have been in season 1 and no one would have been able to tell the difference. While the comedy was fine, the teasing and like, oh, we're gonna do something real, oh, it's gonna get super intense, all of it was like, okay, intriguing, but then after no payoff, it just becomes frustrating and really didn't do this show any favors, especially when in this digital age, you can just change the channel to go to watch something funnier that's just straight comedy like Futurama. So going to part 3, I was really looking at the pacing, because that was gonna be the key, whether or not I was gonna drop this series or not. And fans, I am here today to tell you they did it. Mostly. The big difference between part 2 and 3 is that there is now connective tissue between each episode. There's always a sense of progression. There are no standalone episodes in part 3. The events of one episode are directly connected to the events of the previous one. So for example, in one episode, we end on Elfo, Bean, and a mermaid escaping on a boat. Next episode, they're still on that boat, with Elfo dealing with romantic issues after his last heartbreak, while Bean the mermaid, the lesbians. Then the next episode is Bean dealing with that relationship, hanging out with Una, who empathizes with how things ended. These stories could have been written as standalone episodes, but they tie into each other, making binging them such a much more rewarding experience. There's no episode now where it's like, okay, let's go see what happens, and I could have watched this at any time. No, you watch this episode, you feel like there's progression. It may not always be plot, it may be emotional, but there's always a sense that things are changing, that characters are moving forward, and that is something that I have been aching for with this show. Because yes, you can have comedy, you can be funny, you can tell these crazy, wacky adventures, but if you're going to do that and not reference the story you keep referencing but never addressing, people are going to get frustrated like I did. And this, to me, was the best way they could have done it. Because now, instead of doing the standalone like, oh, we're also hinting at something here, it's like, no. In next episode, we're going to be doing something that was related to what just happened. It may not be directly tied to it, but now it feels like it's an overarching story rather than just a bunch of 10 individual minis tied together only by time. And this was the best choice they could have made, in my opinion. Because if they had completely revamped and said, no, we're gonna make this completely just on the plot, then it would have just changed the tone and the comedy that we've been so used to for the last 2 seasons. Now it feels like more of just a narrative shift in gear. We're now going from standalone comedies to what feels standalone-ish, but they're still directly related to each other. It's not one massive story like you'd see in a show like Kibo where it really is like you need to watch to understand what's happening right now. No, there's still enough leeway to like, if you watch this on its own, it's like, yeah, I get what's going on, as it allows the writers to keep true to the tone and comedy that they set up in the 2 previous seasons. The only episode I would call filler would be the episode 8, the Merkimer episode. He's basically going back to his home kingdom. They're trying to extort them for money and weapons. None of it is relevant after this episode, but he's my favorite character, Merkimer, so I really enjoyed it and it was funny, so I gave it a pass. Well, that's the only exception. Everything besides that is very much tied to what came before. It's not super concise, like it's not, say, Kipo, where every episode's directly tied to the previous one. I like to call them, they're standalone-ish. You don't exactly need to watch this one at a time. But if you binge it all, like most people do, it's a much better experience, because now it's like, okay, I saw what happened here, and the things that they're dealing with is still kind of present, so it's just a better viewing experience. Adding a sense of progression saved this show for me, because now I don't have to get annoyed at the show constantly teasing the greater plot, or how episodes feel like filler. Now, I can just be mad at the lack of payoff. This season's a massive improvement storytelling-wise, I just want that to be said right out of the gate. But it still hasn't shaken off all of its problems. The biggest being this show's insistence on having as many mystery boxes as possible. And say what you want about J.J. Abrams and how he pays off those stories, he can at least make compelling mysteries that you want to find out. Disenchantment, much as I like how funny it can be, whenever it sets up a mystery, I could care less. Because there are, at least to my count, 7 major mystery boxes, and only one of them we find out the answer to, and it doesn't even give us a satisfying one. Like, one is we have to find out the identity of Elfo's non-elf mom. 2, we have to find out why Dagmar wants Bean and what's the whole deal with hell that they have going on. Also, what's the mystery resource? Is that like the dream stones that they have at the bottom underneath Dreamland? Because everyone wants those things apparently, even though we don't know what they do. What do the elves want with Dreamland? What's the Mystery Society's goal? And what is the deal with Bean's powers? Of those 7, we only find out the answer to 1. And that's the most important one of all. What do the elves want with Dreamland? You know, the joke characters that I barely have a tolerance for. And the answer was, underneath the Dreamland Castle was an elf castle, so apparently they were the historic people that lived here before the humans conquered it. Again, I'm not invested in the elves, so I don't give a shit that this is originally elf territory. I know it's gonna play back into one of these other mystery boxes, but this is the problem. They have so many mysteries that I don't care about any of them. Like, it's a lot to ask me to care about all these things, all these different... Oh my god, I completely forgot about... We also have a family curse for Bean's family. Not her mom's side, that's a completely separate prophecy deal. But her dad's side, the whole royal bloodline, who I'm just going to go out on a limb here and assume that they were cursed by the elves for taking over the place. And that's somehow a whole other plot. But again, we only know that they were cursed. It doesn't say what the curse was. We don't see how it affects them. We don't see how it can be reversed. So basically, we have to just take it at their word that there is a curse. It's important. Please care about it. And I don't. It's asking too much to have us care about all these individual little mystery boxes, especially when they're not driving the plot. Because, let's tell you straight up, the characters do not care about these mysteries. Bean wants to stay as far away from Dagmar as possible, so she doesn't really care about why she wants her. She doesn't even know about the fact that Zog's family is cursed, so it doesn't matter there. Elfo doesn't know about why the elves want with Dreamland. And as far as Bean's concerned about the resources hidden down below Dreamland, it's just a source of conflict to be had with other nations. So it might as well have just been gold or oil. There's so much being packed in here that I just tune out whenever these subjects are brought up. And I know they're probably gonna be all wrapped together. There's gonna be like cause and effect. Like these all are gonna be related, but it's still just too much. These should have been linked together earlier on to where we get one reveal of like, okay, we need to find out what the elves want with Dreamland. and that leads us to the resource. We have mysteries, we have stuff that we want to learn, but when we get the answer, it's not only satisfying, but it leaves us with more questions. So, the mysteries we have here though, it's nothing like that. We just find out, okay, now what? What are they gonna do with this? There isn't this compelling thing to make me care. And more than anything, really, that is probably one of the weakest aspects of the show. More than anything, that's probably one of the weakest aspects of the show. There's just too many of these little mysteries that just don't matter. Thankfully, the show's funny, so I'm willing to forgive all the weaker aspects of the plot. Disenchantment, hilarious. It also has a character problem, being that I like the characters, but they are as consistently funny as they are unfunny, and it is not even across the board who is who. Credit to where credit's due, Elfo is not terrible this season. I honestly think he got a lot of good jokes in, and that's because they mostly dropped the Elfo wants to nail Bean plot. Now he's just getting laid with everyone, it looks like. Because he has like three. Actually, technically 4 if you count Bean in the ship. 4 romantic interests, and I don't care about any of them. So then, I get it. Elfo, he's nice, and he's desperate. Can I get a little bit more than that, please? But he is still better, though. It is not, his entire character is not dependent on him lusting after Bean. Here, it's him lusting after everyone else, but at least he gets a couple good moments to shine. His whole telling his story of how he went to all these amazing places with like that smoking adventurer's bar. That was pretty good. Him, even when he was on the ship, I thought that was gold when he was like trying to work through his whole like I just had a breakup thing by imagining the ship is his lady. Funny stuff. I didn't care for him at the end when he decided, yeah, let's make Elfo the focus of this whole final conflict. That's fine. Because I actually like the rest of the cast enough that I'm willing to ignore the weaker of their main characters. Even though this season, Lucy gets sidelined hard, and I will not forgive that. But Bean and the rest of the cast are still pretty good. And comedy is subjective, so you do have to take my word for it when I say that this is funny. But I really chuckled a lot throughout this show. There's only the occasional like hard laugh, but compared to season 2 or season 1 where it was just weird comedic timing, though I do think they need to, I don't know if it's just remove characters or just start rewriting them, but it just, there's some shows that like, okay, across the board, everyone's funny. We might have one little dud joke here and here, but everyone is getting the laughs. This show, it is more of a case, okay, we're gonna see certain characters who are gonna be funny sometimes, and other times, not at all. Like Oddvald, I was like, oh yeah, I think he's really funny at first. This season, honestly, it's like, he's funny 50% of the time. The other half of his jokes just do not hit because they're just about being a pervy old man. The rest are just about him being a pervy old man. Bean was 80-20, Elfo was about 40-60, then Una was 100 out of 100. She was killing me this season. But the lack of consistency is a bit of a problem that I kind of hope that they address and start killing some of the running jokes because the jester getting thrown out the window has long since stopped being funny. Still, really liked it. Had no problems when it came to tickling my funny bone. Let's talk about the villains, because they really do have issues though. The villains need to do something, or be written out of the story. There, I said it, please start cutting the fat on these people. Like, this is a comedy show. They don't have to be always present, menacing, they have to be interfering with the plot. But when they do appear, they kind of have to do something besides disappearing into the background. And Dagmar, love her voice. Hate how she's used in the story. Because she's in episodes 1 and 2, then she's gone. Couple little jump scares, only to reappear at the end, which is exactly what happened in season 2. It's the repetition of, oh, we have this character that we're all kind of afraid of, but we don't know where she is, what she's doing. And it just comes back to the mystery box. We don't know what Dagmar's about. We don't know why she's doing anything. We don't know anything about her other than that she's manipulative and she's hot. And this was established in season 1, and we've learned nothing since. Like, I know it's a comedy, but come on, like, I find it hard to care when they're on screen. Like, Dagmar, pretty bad. The little tech genius, I thought he was okay. Till it turns out he was just obsessed with Bean, which is just a running theme in this show. Everyone has to get laid. Bean, Elfo, everyone wants to be in their pants. Like, Elfo's whatever, but like, is Bean, it's weird because they're like, okay, not your typical romance fantasy story. She doesn't want to get married. Oh, yeah, whatever. Like, oh, we're trying to do something new, something different. What's the story gonna be about? Oh, it's the story of everyone trying to get in her pants. Oh my god. I thought you guys were trying to do something new here. You're starting to kill me with that. But these villains, again, everyone wants something for reasons that aren't immediately clear. Eventually, I'm sure they're going to reveal those reasons, but until they do, doesn't matter. Again, I'm gonna come down hard on this, but I still really love this season. But we have villains that want MacGuffins, even though they themselves are basically MacGuffins because we know nothing about them. And I'm okay having a MacGuffin move the plot forward, but when the characters are MacGuffins, we start to have problems. Because give reasoning, give logic to why a person is doing something. Because at least then I can understand what they're doing. But to give us nothing just leaves the characters to be flat. And though I love the vocal performances, it really just isn't strong enough to carry me through their scenes. And the only character that we really like, okay, villain has a plan, we know most of it, we see him playing and do it, is Oddvald. But he is, again, he's funny 50% of the time, and the other half it's just dead silence. It kind of sours the experience. The characters we want to see are hidden, while the characters we don't want to see get run into the ground. It's still an enjoyable experience, but the cracks are really starting to grow here, and I'm just concerned that this is gonna snowball. Because I can't take another season of new characters getting introduced for me to not care about them. Just quick thoughts. I didn't really care for Zog's mental decline. I consistently love him in the show, but his honking really just annoyed me. But I loved the emotional scene he has with Bean. That was almost worth the experience, and it only got saved a little bit because Chaz got brought back in. Man, I just love me some Chaz. Also, I thought the ogres appearing out of nowhere was... Really? You're gonna make this is how you're gonna go out on? I don't know what they were gonna do with that green smoke cloud, but it just wasn't worth the time. I know the ogre's probably gonna turn out to be Elfo's mother, but I don't think this is where I wanted the story to end up on. Especially with Dagmar appearing again. Almost beat for beat, the exact same scene that season 2 ended on, only to take her down for a wedding in hell. Like, I know, poetry, it rhymes. But I feel like even YouTube would copyright this shit at this point. Again, I love this season though, because it finally feels like it's figured out where it wants to go and how it's gonna do it. It's still trying to toe the line a bit too much, but it feels like it's finally hitting a happy medium of plot and comedy, being that sitcom while also telling this overarching story. And the story that I am just the most invested in is Bean, because I love her, and watching her grow throughout this season has been a delight. And you can see this season as her coming of age story, from leaving her mom's place to getting a job, working through her intimacy issues before tripling down on them, mending her family, and finally becoming queen. She learned to take charge this season, and I want to see that progression continue, because God forbid Zog gets his mind back and comes back, and all of a sudden we're right back where we were in season 2. I do not want... Prove to me that having this overarching narrative doesn't have to be super prevalent. It doesn't have to be demanding that we have this massive story we have to build up to in the climax. Don't need that. To have this progression carry through episode to episode really just makes this a rewarding experience and something that I really care to watch. This has been, hands down, my favorite season, and I can't wait to see what happens in season 4. And I haven't felt this excited since season 1. Oh fuck, they're gonna shit the bed, aren't they? Alright guys, thank you for watching. This has been a bit different from my regular stuff. Really just wanted to get this out there. Stay tuned for my Carmen San Diego video, which... that was a lot of fun. Whatever. Like, share, and subscribe. comment down below, help me out of algorithm hell, and please, have a wonderful day. We're gonna need all the help we can get in 2021, so please, stay safe out there.